All right, I think I got it working now.
Hello?
Yep. All right, anybody else want to listen to the map stuff with Mafia and I?
No mind.
Yep. Hang on, I'll pull you down. If anybody else wants to listen to the map stuff, just go to Division 1 room.
Okay.
All right, so looking at strategy chat. Let's see which ones are the most recent. All right, we'll look at Sleeping Giant first. Let's see if this is still getting it. Yep. No, it's not getting that. Seeing if I can make it bigger. Hang on, let me grab the actual maps. I'll be right back.
Let me go fill my cup of water real quick.
All right, let's see if I can find the Sleeping Giant one first. All right, we'll start with that one. Mafia and Popeye, you both ready?
Man, back.
Looking at him at.
Okay. Yeah, strategy chat. Just go up to the first one, which is Sleeping Giant. And let me know when you're ready, Mafia.
I'm ready to just open up real quick. Alright.
All right, so for this one, if you're going to run a CV, I would put it in the CV1 position that's in the middle of the map behind that big island. Mostly because it's the most flexible. They can focus to east or west. Another position I like to move up to is the CV1 Alpha because you can get super close. That might be a little bit too close for the CV. So CV1 is probably the best one in the middle because you have the problem with you don't want to have if there's ships in the middle of A, you don't want them to have your planes take off and get shot. So I would say that middle position is the best. Have the CV focus the flank that you don't have a DD spotting, and just have that way the cruisers on that side will always have a target to finish. And then if you get low health ships on the other side, you can always bring them to that side to finish off the low health ships. Now on the south side, I would go for A pretty much all the time with just a couple people defending. So you're looking at basically I would probably use the BB1 Alpha there. I like that position initially just because it lets you shoot things that are in the middle while they get to the west flank. So you can catch broadsides there. You can go into a kiting position. You can also push up the middle, up the 6 line, so long as you're mindful of those gaps to take advantage of ships that push into A. Or you can send it east if they push down. The reason why I don't like pushing north on the B flank on the east flank, that island where the CL4 position that's red and the BB1, all those positions have can shoot over the islands, and you won't be able to see them unless you have BD that basically goes all the way up to the 10 line, all the way up to the C or D line to get vision, or they would have to go up the middle, and both of those positions are death for a DD. So I don't like pushing into that. Now, if they push down south, those channels, so the CL1 Alpha position can move up to the channel just ahead of them, and that usually works out pretty well. You can catch people as they come in broadside on the channel, because a lot of people push down the 910 line. Just have to worry about the DDs using islands to their advantage. CL1, let's see, this one looks a little bit different from my other one. So the CL1 alpha position is a good kiting position. I would just hold that, and you can always kite down the 910 line. You just have to be careful about when you decide to kite, because a lot of times if you kite, they can cut down the 7 line, and that island will block your shot because it's this tall island. So sometimes they have to, just get an angle and hold it. That way they can still support the C-cap, or they can just get 2 squares back. They'd have to get to the eye line to defend the cap pretty effectively. If you had 2Ds, I'd use the DD1 alpha position on the east, and it's mostly just not really going much further north than those islands. But if you have 1 DD, I'd put it in the DD2 alpha 2 position, and I'd have it try to go into the center, the east side of A, if RPF and the CV spot, and if they're going wide, you want to go inside to the east. If they're setting up positions where they're cutting close to the gap and there's like the red CL1 alpha position, then you're going to want to call off your DD and have them go around the other side, because otherwise, if you try to push in, you'll usually wind up with them dying.
So do you usually not push that DD into A until you know what they're doing?
Yes, and so
Right.
you're going to know what they're doing within 20 or 30 seconds, because I would have the CV probably scout the A side first, and he's going to be focusing the A-cap generally. Yeah, you can play passive on the east side because they have so much ground to cover to push down. So initially I'd have your CV cap or spot the A side, mostly in the middle so they can catch broadsides and shoot people early. And then if there's an opening to go into the east, you want that DD to go in and then get you those early cap points. Now the big thing is once they get in on the east side, they either have to go all the way up to the north of the island with like torp angles ready to fire into that entrance to the west, or if they don't decide to push down, a lot of people will immediately push down a cruiser as fast as they can into the cap to dislodge that DD. So that's why it's really critical to get that CL2 Alpha 1 position out there so they can shoot at anybody who tries to go in that's broadside. And then if you have a carrier there too, that would definitely help, or at least supporting that side. You'll probably have to exit out the east side and then have them either spot the middle. I like sending the DD after a battleship if I can find them, because unfortunately that west side of the map is it's very trappy for a DD. If they aren't by that island on the F1 line, then they really don't have any cover. If they get caught on the 2 line, they're dead. If they get caught north of, on the E or G line, if you're red or blue spawn, you're usually dead, because there's usually a cruiser at CL2A or A2 or A1. I think the best way to win this map is always to go for the A-cap. That would be the one that I would struggle for, because especially if you're of the north spawn, you can just put 1 or 2 ships behind that island. So long as you have a DD or a CV spotting for you, or you'd have to have that CL3A pretty much forward taking shots while the other 2 try to farm back. And let's see. Yeah, it's mostly just reacting to what the initial spawn is. Most teams are going to be A-focused. If you do see a death ball, try to send, if it's a full death ball, of course, you can just send 1 ship to quickly cap A, preferably the DD that can get there and back the fastest. And then you set your cruisers. Do you remember that one time where Lee encountered a death ball, and there's the island, if you're on the south spawn, for example, between the G and F line on G6 and 7?
And when they ran those two republics,
Yeah,
yeah,
you push into that island there, and you can get really good cross shots, and you can get really good protection. You don't have to push too deep into the inlet. Um, yeah, you don't want to push into the one north of it just because it takes too long to get there, and if they have any positions that are on the west flank, it's too easily shot. The only thing you really have to worry about is if they have a cruiser in that CL-1A position. That really locks down the middle. And then one of the things that Mafia, or not Mafia, but Lodge brought up, the island on the north side, they will sometimes just put a cruiser on that island to the west, and he can be bow in or stern in. With Petros and stuff, I'd probably just be bow in, but if you put a cruiser there and you support it with CV or something else, it makes it so where they can't basically push around. They have to, if they try to take the B cap, they're going to be broadside to you. So that's a really good defensive position, but it doesn't really have a lot of targets to shoot in the beginning. But that's something that they recommended. I wasn't too much in agreement. This is actually kind of a 2 battleship map. Let's see if I can scroll down. Do you have any more questions on that map?
no, that map's I got. It seems pretty straightforward. Now there is one. It's the shit. I cannot remember the name of it. Warrior's Path, I think.
Yeah, that's the one that we have the lowest win rate on.
I think that's the one where I keep getting absolutely blapped in my Des Moines. Because they keep this is every time I played on this map. Lee and Gray have done it, where they put me. Is it Warrior's Path? It was the one where I ran my gearing on.
So if you look at strategy chat, I think it's.
Yep.
Let's see, from the bottom, it's the second from the second lowest.
It's the one with all those tiny, tiny islands. I can't. Is it Warrior's Path?
That'd be Islands of Ice.
It wasn't
Northern Waters, actually. That's
the
tiny islands on the east side.
Yeah. So that map.
That's about 6 up on strategy chat.
So they always put me at the B cap. They always try to put me on that corner there on the northern tip, just so I can get my ship into the cap. Or last game they pushed me down into the the D6 on that edge, like right on the corner, because they deathbolt pretty hard up there.
Yep.
The problem I'm finding with that is because they pushed Saloth way out wide, so I was by myself. So that position, unless we're running heavy B, I think we should stay away from, solely because as soon as they see someone sitting there, they're going to focus them hard. I mean, Lee sent me there to that D6. I told him I need to get out of there because the Richtofen smacked me for half my health. So Lee says, all right, pull back. He smacked me again for the rest of my health. I had 3,000 health when I pulled out. So I don't know if that spot's very viable nowadays.
No, so for you, the only way that you're going to survive in Des Moines, you just can't be posted up on an island anymore. You have to be with someone else and getting their AA. Because a Richthofen, I've been playing it today. Every time I've seen a Des Moines, I just kill them in 2 passes with AP bombs, and there's not really anything they can do about it.
Yep.
Unless they have planes overhead or they have basically a AA bubble. So if you look at the map and strategy chat, if I were to put you in the Des Moines, the position that I would put you at, I think I'd probably put you at the CL1 position. And the reason why I would put you there is because with the DD in the middle, especially the DD being the Holland, they can back you up with AA.
CL1, I'm missing that. I'm not seeing it.
So it's on the southeast side of ACAP, and it's...
Oh, got it. Yep.
So this way, you're actually on the east side of that, with the guns to the northeast. Now, the big problem with the Des Moines is if you're still running Legendary, you only have 14.5 range, which I don't think is enough to shoot across the map or anybody going down from BC.
No, once I get the I can't ever remember the name of it, where I can get the legendaries. Um, I'm going to switch out that legendary, and I'm going to do the range legendary.
Yeah, that would be the one that I would recommend. But essentially, what you do there is you just police the middle. The DD is supposed to be in the middle, patrolling that area. And what you do is, if they have, for example, if they have a battleship that's at the BB1 Alpha 1 position by the Bravo cap, you're probably going to have to go dark, and you're probably going to have to reverse away from that position and maybe fall back to that southwest island and pair up with the other Petro that's on the west.
Nope.
Because yeah, if a battleship's there, he's just gonna overmatch your nose, and there's nothing you can do about it. So that would be something to watch out for. But if it's something like a cruiser, you can out trade and out DPM them all day long. So it's really ideal so long as you're not fighting a battleship. That would be the situation you would want to run from or avoid. So if you see a battleship there, then you would even set up on the west side of the island, or you would try to kite and go to the west side of that island on the southwest corner of A, or northwest if you're mirrored. And then for the battleship, for whatever reason, that CL4 Alpha 3 position is where the top clans put their battleships, which doesn't make much sense to me. I would rather keep the battleship right on the corner between the C and B because it gets all the cross shots. You can shoot into that gap on the west side of A if ships push in. And then you have the option of pushing up slightly and getting more cross shots, or you can turn your guns and ambush people that come down from B to C. And it's pretty well protected. You have a lot of cover options. You just have to, so long as you have center control, you really don't have anything to worry about.
Yeah, one of the times I called in this map, I put my battleship right basically where the CL1 is position is, a little bit south of that.
Yeah.
Right, kind of where that I put our Jobu went right where that DD2A1 is, basically.
Yeah.
And we had a Burgoyne come down, and we had their gearing out there, and then they posted up a Petro and like two Moskvas at the CL2 on the northern side of the map there.
Yeah.
And they ran an Ohio and I think Petro and some other ship on the northeast flank. That works pretty well, solely because of how heavy they went there. I was able to, because if I had gone to the BB1 Alpha, it might have been a little bit better because I would have gotten cross shots onto those three cruisers. But being there, I was able to tank so much damage for Jobu and poison them. Plus, with the Burgoyne there, I think they would have been in a bit of trouble if I had not been there.
Yeah, you basically stopped their push. But you can kind of get into I do like that BB1 Alpha position better, just like you said, because a lot of times if they don't push down, they stack up behind that island northeast of A, and that's where I don't want to give them cover, and I'd rather pound them from there. And it lets you, when you're that far out, it lets you disengage between cooldowns, so you can wait and use your heals a little more effectively. You only have to push when you want to. All right. Any other questions about the other positions? Like the CL4 Alpha 2 is like if you're doing a heavy push on Northern Waters, you could push people down that way. I would have one cruiser on that line, probably one on the 8-9 line pushing down, and maybe a BB down the center, or maybe a BB down the 8-9, and you should be able to push people out of that cap pretty effectively. Just depends on where you want to focus. I wouldn't really commit any DDs to A. Sometimes if I notice that it's a full cruiser team and we have a DD, I'll have the DD just speed boost into A, and I'll have them go from the southwest of the cap to like that gap on the east and then cut out to the south. And we can usually get the cap. They can't get their cruisers around fast enough. The most dangerous thing is if they have a RCL2 position, then you have to have the battleship putting a lot of pressure on that cruiser so he can't push around and kill that DD. And then you can have your RCL1 position push up or directly counter that cruiser that's there and just make sure that they get killed or back off, and that way your destroyer can get out in the middle and start torping again. That's one of the main things that I try, but I mostly focus the ACAP, but I try to keep my cruisers pretty far south so they have the option to disengage, because if like you push into the ACAP, you just push into crossfire, so you just stay a little bit far back and you wait for them to push into you, and then you line them up and kill them.
So is that kind of the rule of thumb with these maps? Because take C, but push the lone cap?
Yeah, that'll work for the majority of the maps. The exceptions would be like Greece, especially if you're north spawn, because the base caps are so close to each other. So that's something that you can always push. You can go heavy on that side and just have maybe 1 or 2 ships over on the other. So you can do. I usually do the 4-2 push on Greece, and it's pretty effective. But the trick with that is, do you want to go to that one next?
Sure.
All right, let's see if we can pull up Greece. All right, so for Greece, if you're looking on the south side, the trick is, like, you want to have a cruiser, like if you're looking at the south spawn, the CL5 is really good for a Petro or like a Des Moines. And the thing you would have to worry about is if you're in the Des Moines, of course, you know, the carrier focusing you and dropping you. So if that's the case, I'm probably going to push the battleship closer just to give them some AA cover. And I'm probably going to have my CV dropping fighters on the way. I think that CV1 position on the southeast side is really good, because basically every time the carrier flies, he can, or sends out a squadron, he can drop a fighter on that CL5 position, keep it safe, and go strike whatever target you need. Now, the trick on this one is you can't push up until you take out your crossfire threat. So if you're on the south spawn and you're looking at the red, C4 would be the first cruiser you'd want to take out. And if they can't shoot that C4 cruiser, then you got CL3, CL4 that are going to be attacking the CL5 position or the battleship. So when you call your primary or secondary targets, you want to try to pick a target that can't disengage. So say, for example, that C4 is right between those two islands. He might be the worst one to call, because if you focus him, he can just reverse behind the islands and disappear. So you're looking for people that are overextended. So the ones that you can probably keep lit the majority of the time would be the battleship, and that's mainly through the DD being east of those islands between B and C. If there's a battleship there, they can just kind of keep on that patrol route, shoot torps. Battleships are a very good primary target if you don't have an exposed cruiser. The second best target would be the CL5 position for the CL3 and CL4 cruisers, because they have a really good angle, and depending on the CL3 might be able to shoot CL5 without him being able to be seen. So that's always an option. With the DDs, if you get them far enough east, they can torp that slant into B, especially Holland torps. If they go thin spread, they're really effective at nailing people that are posted up there. And of course, MBRs can do it if they don't protect them. The cool thing, if you do have the Russian radar from those points can actually radar both caps. And one of the things that, if you look at CL1 position and the DD1 alpha position, what a lot of, this is one thing that we've kind of been weak on. What they do is they push 2 cruisers basically just north of those islands, and sometimes south, almost through that gap on the 1 line. And what they do is they just try to have 2 cruisers that are really close to each other. You have the CV constantly giving vision and then shooting at any targets that try to get into A until you win that flank, and then you have the rest of everybody else focus the BC side. And that seems to be the most successful strategy. So most clans aren't using that CL2 position anymore because it gets too easily farmed by cruisers that are on the 1-2 line. And I wouldn't recommend just throwing The only time I would throw a DD right into the A cap is if they don't have any DDs themselves, and you can get in there pretty quickly and possibly get the cap before they can stop you. But I would much rather have the DD on the east flank for the torpedoes and getting into those positions and spotting. That way the CV's kind of free to go where he needs to go. You could, if you're on the north spawn, you could use that CV1 Alpha, depending on how many ships they need help with on that flank. Otherwise, you can move it to that northeast position. Greece is a really small map, so they're all good. DDs have good opportunities to go up the middle. There was, were you in that match where that Shimakaze rushed up the middle and torped the gap between B and C and took out 2 ships?
Possibly. I think that was the time I got absolutely deleted in my Des Moines because I was sitting like where the CL2 positions on the north side. Except I was in between the islands.
So if you're in between those islands, unfortunately, if there's a BB1 position in the south, he can shoot over that gap in the middle and kill you. So you have to be behind the big island in the back, and I think there's a big ridge in the one in the front, but if you're caught in between, you're dead.
Got it.
So that's another reason why a lot of people don't use that position, because it can get cross-shot. So that's why they move out to the 1-2 line with the 2 cruisers. They're super close, give each other AA, and then they just focus down targets.
So that position, so you would do so let's say you're on the north side, you would do one on the south side of the B4 and one on the north side of the A5 island. That's what you're saying, like right in between that channel there?
Yeah, so what they initially do is if you see on the north side, between the CL1 position and the DD1 Alpha, like in the middle of that square up there is where they have the cruisers start out initially, and then they look for an opportunity to go between the gap on the 1-2 line.
Got it. Now, how would that work for the south side? It's laid out a little bit differently.
Exactly the same.
Got it.
And that's where that's where the top clans are putting their cruisers, and then
so basically they'd put both their cruisers where the CL1 is mirrored.
Yeah, just
basically
maybe a little bit further south, and then they're looking for opportunities to push.
Got it.
But you pretty much have to have CV spotting because DDs aren't very effective on that side. Because they either get stuck behind that island or they have to push into radar and crossfire, which isn't good for them. But so, for example, like on the BC side, once you take out CL4 or CL3, like whatever cruisers on the east, then those cruisers can move up, and then they can get crossfire on. They can move up about a square or so, use those islands to the east for their advantage, and they can shoot that CL5 position even better. And so you just have to, once you take out a cruiser on that flank, then you can move up. Any more questions on that one?
No. So the next one I had was, I think it's Warrior's Path. No, it wasn't Warrior's Path. It's yes, north.
North. Yep.
So spawning on the south side, that big island left on would that be the east side of C? No, yeah, it'd be the west side of C. Mm-hmm. At the F6, that line there.
Yeah.
So that position, I've been put there twice in my Des Moines, both times I've played there. And so the CV was kind of a problem. But the problem that I was running into was we were losing that DD, and he was coming out behind to the far east side and torping through that gap.
And you or with HE behind the island and stuff like that.
And he was torping me. So, and the problem is because of how late in the way the game developed both times, is they had pushed cruisers and stuff out west. So if I had backed up and got in cover on the east side of the island or the west side of the island, I would have gotten farmed by the guys over there. But if I'd stayed, I would have died to torps and aircraft.
Yeah. So one thing that I like about that position, or not that particular position, a lot of people will put things there, but if you look at the one in strategy chat, the CL4 position is like that, but it's one square further over.
Yep.
And what I have it do initially is I have them shoot at A to try to get cross shots at people that set up in the cap. And if the CV like spots, or if you have a DD that can kind of get spotting fast, you can actually entirely stop them from capping in A, and that's kind of a worthy focus because most teams aren't going to rush C right off the bat. They just set up that crossfire position, and they just wait until they kill a ship, and then they push into C. A lot of times they try to push into C on the east side, but most, like Lodge, doesn't push the C cap at all. They just set up. They try to push 2 cruisers down kind of where the DD1 position is. They just go straight broadside through the cap and cut southwest. They turn out or whatever if they get spotted. But they try to push them down to like the E1, F1 line and just try to engage from there, and they just slowly pick apart the opposition. That's another good place for the DD to go because they can go there, spot, and torp. I like the CL4 position just because once you finish with that initial engagement at A, unless they're doing a hard push, it's a very good defensive position because you can get cross shots on anybody that pushes down. You can farm the cap, and if you're needed to, you can cut east to C to support. You can pop your radar, have radar on C, or if you have an opportunity, you can rush up that 5-6 gap and surprise some positions. It can be really effective, especially if you push a BB up there. But I like having that BB1 and CL4 really close to each other. That way they can support each other with AA. And then for that one, yeah, if you have the DD on the AB side, I would send the CV to like the 1 alpha position and just have them focus the C side. Or you can have them hang out and spawn until you figure out where they're committed. And then just have them move to the side that you want them to mainly focus. The CL1 position is the most dangerous. It's a little more protected on the north side compared to the south, because there's like a little nook that you can get in on the north side that actually will protect you from torpedoes, but you'll still be able to fire over. So it's stronger on the north side for C. And then the CL5 position is basically where you want to get to. Initially, I like having a cruiser at CL1 and CL2, and then I push. If you want to push a C flank, then you would push a DD and a cruiser out to the 9-10 line and try to kill whatever's there, and then take the cap from the east side and use that trick where you farm. Using that small island, you farm that other CL4 position at F6. Kill that, and that pretty much opens up the cap generally. You just have to kill that cruiser if he's there, or the one at CL1, and you're in good shape. And the battleship, I kind of put them in the middle so that way they can support either flank. The double BBs is very effective in pushing C cap or B to A. I think they're more effective at pushing the C cap than they are up the 3 line. Just because if they try to push down that way, you can set up a lot more crossfire between A and B than you can at C.
So in terms of clan layout, or clan layout, ship layout, so are we going to be looking still at the single DD running a carrier? Because I know you were saying that trading the health for the spotting might not be exactly worth it.
Yeah.
Unless that BB puts in a massive, or that DD puts in a massive, really pulls his weight, I guess.
The only so like say for example you're fighting the majority 2 BB games. If you have 2 DDs that have very effective torps, like Legendary Shima would be the absolute best thing to bring. But it's a gamble because then you're at a disadvantage if you fight a CV team because it has the weak AA, but you have torps that will absolutely delete someone. You can, I would only do it if you have really good DD players. DD players that I would trust doing it would be like Iowa, Richard. I don't think Lee uses the legendary, but he's good in the Shima.
Yeah.
Saloth. Like those would be like the main 4 DD players that I would push having 2 DDs. Otherwise, I would just go down to 1 DD. And I'd have it be the Holland or the Smallland. The Smallland is a really good choice. The only one who really has it right now is Richard, because it has that speed boost where it can go up to like 48 knots. And so, like, if you had a Smallland, for example, you could sprint it directly into sea behind that island, and you could get the cap right away. You wouldn't take any damage or any. I mean, he might get spotted by the CV initially, but he can shred the planes, get behind the island, wait out the radar, and exit out the east side and cut south. That would be an early advantage that you can go for. Hollands are too slow to do it. The only other one that's fast enough to do is the Marceau. But the main DDs that you're going to use are Holland, Smallland, and then I would say maybe Summers or Gearing. Gearing's a good choice just because it still has strong torps and it has good AA. So that's like, if you're going to run double DD, I would recommend running double Gearing. If you're seeing a mix, like if you're seeing 60% double battleship, I'd run double Gearing. If you're seeing, if it's 50-50, then stick with 1 DD. So you only want to kind of skew it when you're seeing a lot of BBs. Otherwise, it's not worth it. You're better off just having an extra cruiser for the HP.
Are you expecting tonight for us, since we're up in a higher league now, are you expecting a lot more CVs?
So, at least when we've been playing clan battles lately, we've had almost 70% double BB battles. And then when Lodge was saying that they are almost at, I think they were at like 60-40. And then when you get to the top tiers, it's just like when you get to the top of Storm League or middle of Storm League, it's almost all CV.
And that's our next league, right?
Yep.
All right. Oh, so this is a question for my gearing. Would you recommend running the 16 km torps with the speed?
Saloth is a big fan of that, but you're giving up a 2-point slot. So what I would normally do, you run Last Stand, and the other one I like to run in the 2-point slot is Adrenaline Rush. So I like that one personally, and I do run the 16.5s. You can run Torp Acceleration, but with especially the way people play, like you're probably going to get more out of the range than you are the speed.
Got it.
And then
it still goes down. It only goes down to what, 13.5 or something like that.
The legendary mod is very good for the gearing. I recommend using it if you earn it or get it.
What's that legendary?
Legendary brings your concealment down to the same as Shimakaze, so you won't get outspotted. You give up, I think it's like 10 or 15% gun reload and torp reload. It's hardly noticeable, but you get a huge advantage in spotting. So, like, you could just spot a Holland and just kite away from him and just keep him lit without being seen, and then open up when you have an advantage. You would have like almost a 0.3, 0.4 km spotting advantage on a Holland versus 0.1.
And are you gearing's faster than a Holland, right?
They're right about the same speed.
All right.
And then I think, so the main ships that you have are Des Moines. You have Des Moines, Gearing, and Montana. Montana's still really good.
I got Worcester too, but you had me run that a couple times.
Yeah.
I did better. I did pretty good in that one, as long as I stayed pretty far away. Obviously, don't get close at all. Use the range.
Des Moines, the crazy thing about Worcester is it does have insane range, and if you find an island to sit behind, or you have someone smoke you, you can be really, really effective. Those would be like the main synergies that you're working for, but everybody's running Holland, so you don't really have smoke. But there are really good islands, like on south. Like if you're on the southeast side of or the CL2 position, the island just south of that, I think you could shoot over that one. You could shoot over the islands at just east of BB1 on north and south. Those would be good islands to post up behind. I think the island way, and you would have the range just to range Rainfire. Or if you get on the east flank on the 9-10 line, that's a really good position for you because you can get it to the CL5 position or in that general area and just rain fire on that whole south side of the cap or through the gap.
How viable would a Worcester Minotaur run be if you were to stick those two together? Because one thing that the complaint with the Minotaur is it lacks radar, but it has the smoke, and if you pair that with a Worcester,
so
because they both got the hydro, they both have really good AA.
The problem with the Minotaur is just there's a lot of not as many people are bringing the Stalingrads, but the Stalingrad could overmatch your nose. The Minotaur just gets blown up if it gets caught. But if you have the smoke, there's just a lot of 12 cam radar. You're talking about teams that you've got 4 to 5 12 cam radar, and so that it puts you have to smoke far out in strategic positions, and you have to use the smoke when the targets aren't going to be able to disengage or where you're not going to lose vision. So those opportunities are pretty narrow.
So a quick question on the Research Bureau. When you research the Ohio, whatever, do you lose the Montana, or do you keep them both?
So the way that works is, you reset a line.
Yep.
It goes all the way back to Tier 1. All the experience that you earned goes onto that Tier 1. And so it lets you research the Tier 2. And then all that experience still stays on the Tier 1. So you have to grind all the way down. And then starting at Tier 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, for every victory the first victory that you gets you the Research Bureau points. So the way that it works is they have the first line that you reset is worth 20,000 points. And they're talking about adding some changes where I think they're going to make the Tier 5 and Tier 4 give you Research Bureau points as well. So it's going to increase the amount. I'm not sure if that's live yet. But right now it's Tier 6 and up unless it's already changed. But so if you reset, the best way to do it is a split line like Haragumo and Shimakaze, or any line that has a split. So like Des Moines and Worcester would be a good one to reset if you so chose, because you would wait till the very end of the month, or there's a 3-month season, and in that 3-month season you get one 20K bonus. So you could reset the Des Moines, for example. It would go to 1, and then you would wait a day when the new season starts and reset the Worcester, and that way you don't have to regrind ships 1 through 5 twice.
Got it.
And then, so you earn the points, and so say if you did that trick, that would get you 40,000 research points, and then you just have to wait for another 3-month season, or you'd have to regrind 2 lines to get the Ohio, for example.
So it's 80,000 to get the Ohio, whatever?
It's 61, but until they add the points on the Tier 4 and Tier 5, then you would have to do more than you would have to do 2 boosted bonuses, or you'd have to do 3 boosted bonuses, and 1 more partial reset to get the points. It's really annoying the way that they did it. But for example, now I got everything I want. So I got the Montana and the Ohio. It's just, if you want to reset the lines, cruisers or DDs are your best bet. I would highly recommend and you can only do it once you have 5 Tier 10 researched lines. So,
yeah, I almost have the Hindenburg. I'm 30,000 away from it.
Yeah.
And then, so the legendaries are Research Bureau points, are the points as well?
Which ones?
So the legendaries cost points as well?
Yes, they do. Before, if you had that Tier 10, they would let you earn the legendary through quests. That's how initially it was unlocked. So I've got quite a few of those. But yeah, now you have to. But the other thing that they added is you can get Research Bureau points from dockyard events, and you can also get them from where you have to purchase all the doubloons, and then all the phases that you complete, you get Research Bureau points instead of, or you get, I think it's 600 per phase. So I did that for the Anchorage event, and then the other way that you can get it is through daily quests. So they're making it slightly better. Or you could be like Yamato and just constantly have 2 lines reset, but just know that when you reset a line, it costs you about 22, 23 million credits to buy all the stuff back. Everything gets demounted for free, and you sell your ships at half price, but buying them back up the line is where it gets expensive, and then putting the modules back on if you didn't have them. But that's why when I reset lines, I usually free XP up to tier 6. And then I work 6 down.
Got it.
All right. Any other questions on those maps?
It seems pretty straightforward.
Let's see. I think we haven't done Ice Islands. Did you want to look at that one?
Yeah, that's a map that I got stuck on, or that I kind of fucked up on last time. When I put Lee way out, and we had those 2 Puerto Ricos.
Yeah. So most clans don't push B and C. The top tier clans will. What they'll do is they'll just send 2 cruisers onto that flank, and they'll cap C, and then they'll push up the 9-10 line and just engage whatever they can and peck away. The way that I play it in the middle is I get so if I'm on the south side, for example, I'll have them cap the C cap, and I like pushing up to that CL2 position because it lets them get crossfire on the middle. It also lets them, and I have them bow in toward A, and they can shoot behind that island all the way across. So if there's some DD that's posted up behind there, or somebody trying to push the cap, you can get broadside on them. But mostly just helps you control the middle, so they can harass the battleship that's in the middle or the DD. I like having the DD that's in the middle because they can go and torp. Because if they push up the 1-2 line, if they don't go directly to that spot on A cap and then directly like south or north, depending on what side you're on, like if you push out on either side, you're just going to get crossfired by all the other ships. So it's like a death trap. And I think that they get more torp opportunities in the middle. The biggest thing that you will run into, I would say in general, it's better for the cruisers to set up on the west side of those islands, because then they can both hit the same targets. If they set up on the east side, it leaves the 1 line exposed, and you can just push a cruiser all the way down and then get crossfire on those 2 positions. And if you have the CV on that flank, which I would recommend, then he gets killed there too. So that happened to us the other night. So that's why I like the west side a little bit more, and usually that gives you cover from the battleship. But you have to be very smart about those islands, and the smart thing is to kind of stay up behind them initially and then figure out which side you want to set up on. But 9 times out of 10, west side is the best side. And then I don't like shoving a DD into A unless they don't have a DD and they're all cruisers. Then you can just go in there, wait out the radars, make sure you heavily engage the cruisers that try to push up, and then just push out of the A cap whenever the radar's not there. But you could easily do a 3-3 push, and that might be an interesting strategy where you kind of stall at A and you push with 3 ships from B to C, just because it'll catch a lot of people unawares, because they'll usually have 1 or 2 ships there, and that might give you an easy advantage. And it takes a long time to reinforce the east flank from A. There's so many islands and everything else, like so long as they're on the 8, 9, 10 line, most of the time the A flank can't engage those ships whatsoever. So that might be something I might try later tonight.
So I just want to clarify for this map. Got a little bit lost. So you recommend for this map sending the bulk of your forces to A and just sending a couple ships to C? Basically the exact opposite of what I did?
Yes.
All right.
There have been many times where I've just sent a single cruiser to C because it's that rare that they push that cap. And I just send 1 cruiser to that CL2 position. and I usually heavily focus the. Now, what the top clans will do is they'll just push down the 9-10 line with the two cruisers, giving each other AA, and that way they're engaging both flanks. Eventually, we'll want to get there. What I try to do is, if I know that I have like weaker players, I'll send them to the off flank where there's a little less action. And you'll get to know who's like strong or independent minded. Some people need a lot of micromanaging, so the people that need micromanaging I send to an off flank. And then the people that I can usually trust I send to a main flank.
I don't mean to be I don't want to sound like an asshole here, but can you give me a heads up as to who those are, just so I know going in?
Yeah, I'll message you.
All right.
And then let's see.
So those the kind of players that you recommend sending to the C flank, kind of.
Yeah, and a lot of the times I'll send people that are just closest to that flank.
Yeah.
That's the other easiest way to do it. It lets you get, but I mean, you usually start in the middle, so it really doesn't make that much of a difference.
Well, just so you're not crossing over each other's bows and turns,
Yeah,
you're not slowing each other up.
But you'll notice, like, so say you, if you don't rotate your team, if someone's on an off flank and you don't rotate people, and they start off on the off flank, they're always going to be on the off flank, just because that's just the way the spawns work. Unless you shuffle the list, your spawn is always going to be on a flank. Does that make sense? If you start off on one. But if you do wind up with like two stronger players on a flank that are closer, then have them do a 2-man push and see what they can do. Unless the CV spots something, then if they're outnumbered, they kite, but if it's even numbers or better, then they push.
Got it.
But I would say just try not to shove your DD in A if you can all help it. It's a lot better if they're in the middle or like between the E, let's see, A, B, C, D, like if you're on the south side, south of the F line, on north side, out north of the E line, because if they push much further south than that, they get killed. And don't put cruisers where the X's are, because you'll die.
Got it.
DDs can go there. It's not a bad position for a DD. But
I think that's a mistake I made too, is I sent a cruiser there last time.
I used to send Des Moines there all the time, but they just all the other cruiser positions and battleship in the middle, or even that CL2 position, can just make their life hell. All right. Any other questions on that one?
That's good on that one.
All right, so we covered Northern Waters, we covered Greece, we covered Sleeping Giant. And we covered North. And did we do Warrior's Path? I don't think we have yet.
No.
Okay, all right, pulling that up. So Warrior's Path is really similar to Islands of Ice, in my opinion. It's just less open. The island mechanics are very, very similar. So on the north side, the most dangerous positions to be in are CL4 and CL, the one that's just northeast of it in the parentheses. It has very, very narrow angles. It's only good for if ships push into you. So what I would recommend, one thing that's interesting, so like the higher leagues, they'll just send, on almost every map, they'll send 2 cruisers in a pair to the 1-2 line, 2 cruisers to the 9-10 line, and push down and make the best of it. Now, on this particular map, the 9-10 line, pushing someone around all the way around like that takes forever in a day. If they push between the 7 and 8 line, and they stay like to the east of those islands as they go down in the main channel, they're actually protected from crossfire. Now, the only thing they would have to worry about is if they push into that sea cap, you just got to figure out what the ship position is for the cruisers, because they could have pretty much a cruiser on the 8-9 line and a cruiser on the 6 line, and if you push into it, they push into a crossfire and they get killed. The CL1 position on the east side is a really good position if you have, especially if you have long range. because it can shoot behind that big island in A. And I have seen a lot of teams that will push Petros behind the cap in A, like early on before you can. But that's something that you want to try to. I would definitely send the CV to scout A first. Make sure they don't get into the cap. And I would even put the CV behind that, if you're on the north spawn, behind that big island. And I'd put 1 or 2 cruisers there. You can put a cruiser on the west side of the island where CL4 is. And that'll be fine if the battleship's in the middle, for example. But if he goes forward, he'll get crossfired. If he goes backward, he'll get crossfired. Same thing's true on the east side of that position. So they have to play really, really static, which isn't good in carrier meta. So that's why a lot of clans are pushing to the 1-2 lines instead. So that's probably what I'd recommend. You don't want to really push the cap. You just want to get into those initial positions, like we're near CL3, and have a pair up there, out trade once you get a ship advantage, then push down. Because if you push down too early, you just get crossfired and killed. I do like having a BB near the middle. You can either put them right by the C flank initially, or you can put them in that BB1 position, and it gives them a little bit closer, and they can kind of crossfire things that push down. They can even shoot DDs. I like having a DD in the middle initially because I want to find out where that BB is and harass the crap out of them. And they can also help out and support the east flank. So a lot of my strategies have like a center focus.
So, clarification. So, for this map, you recommend setting the cruisers, doesn't matter what side, out to the CL3 position. So there's on the south side, there's 2 small islands, sending 2 cruisers down there.
Yeah.
And then on the north side, just that 1 medium-sized island up there.
Yeah.
All right. So in positioning those, would you recommend one on the west side of each of those islands with the south, or one on the?
You want them to be on the same side. So say if you did split one east and west, the one on the west, like if the CV decided to strike the one on the east side, the one on the west of the island couldn't support it because you know how AA blocks will block your AA fire.
Oh yeah.
So you literally just want them to be on the same grid square, and I would just set them up in kiting positions, especially if they're Petros, and they can just kind of reverse if they don't have targets. And then one thing that you'd be looking for, it's kind of worth it if you see it's a Cyclone map, which are coming up almost half the time, to try to get the cap early, if possible. So that might be a time that if you see it's a Cyclone map, it might be worth throwing a DD into that island behind A and just sending your CV to focus it. And just, if you can get that cap for the CV before the Cyclone hits, and then set all your forces up on that one line, and just have them slowly go forward and just enough to cover the cap and just kill everything one at a time as they come in, that'd be really effective for you. And then also you could push down the 7 line without worrying too much on the C side, so long as they don't have 2 CLs that are like split by like every other grid square, because then you'd push into like being broadside to 2 cruisers at once. So those are the main things you have to work out for, or worry for. And I would recommend, if you could, you play the BB. I'd definitely bring an MVR in Ohio, and then I would also bring as many Petros as you can bring, just because it's that good of a ship. So Petros, Holland, MVR, whatever battleship you can bring.
Got it.
One thing that's interesting, if you do wind up being against a Ohio and you have an MVR, if the Ohio is on, or if the FDR is on its own, the MVR can kill the Ohio in 3 rocket strikes. So it might be worth it to go for a carrier snipe in the beginning if they don't push up to AA bubbles. Like if they push up to like a lot of my carrier positions are pretty close to cruisers positions. If that's the case, they're probably not going to be able to pull it off. But if they stay back in the spawn, or if they're like on Sleeping Giant, where in the middle of the map on their own, you definitely could go for a carrier snipe and make your game a lot easier for yourself.
Just saying that's the Ohio. They're saying
Not the
we're
Ohio.
running.
So if you come up against an FDR and you have a
MVR got it.
on your team.
Got it. Okay.
Because it's very slow and sluggish, and if you can catch it broadside, it will. The MVR can. You could take out their carrier in the first 4 or 5 minutes of the match.
Got it. How often have you guys been coming up against those? Because I haven't seen them very often. The FDRs.
It's a pretty rare ship. It's mostly been MVR. We've only fought maybe 10 FDRs.
All right.
It's a lot more common at the higher tiers, though.
Oh, because everyone has everything up with those.
Yeah, they have the steel, so they go nuts.
Is that a good ship compared to the other CVs? Because I've heard mixed things about it.
So it's really hard to play. The thing that makes it truly terrifying is the fact that it can do like 25k damage with the HE bombs, and it has a 70% fire chance. And then it shoots 8 torps at a time from the 2 planes, so you're pretty much guaranteed to get a flooding. So, and then the crazy thing is like if you don't have stacking AA, they can basically take out one ship no problem. And so it's really, really good at high alpha strikes. And then the disadvantage that it has is it has to wait 25 seconds between the attacks. But it almost works to its advantage, because say if it sets those fires, you repair those fires. By the time you attack again with the planes, you can set new fires, and they'll be permanent this time. But they're just slower planes that you have to fly through the flak. It's more skill intensive to play.
Got it.
And I think my son just woke up.
Damn kids.
Any more questions on this one?
No, I think that's everything for that one.
All right, and I'll send you that message with what you talked about earlier.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, thank you.